Hi, everyone. I'm Rosemary Miller. Lawyers, if you're curious about using AI technology in your everyday workflow, I have Pablo Areendondo, the CIO and co founder of Casetext, here to tell us more. Pablo, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So, Pablo, for starters, what is Casetext and also what is co-counsel?
Right. So, Casetext is a platform for legal technology. We've been around for about 10 years, selling primarily to litigators, although not exclusively to litigators. And we've been applying artificial intelligence in various forms to make tools that can make it easier to do legal research, to draft briefs, things of that nature. And what co-counsel is a suite of tools built on this new generation of AI, these large language models that are causing such a fuss. Casetext was given very early access to GPT-4, which is the most powerful current AI model, and we've been bringing it to law for the last 9 months.
Wow. So, how can lawyers actually use this to make their lives a little bit easier?
Absolutely. So, I mean, the important thing to understand with this technology is that there's a big difference between using it correctly and using it incorrectly. And what I mean by that is you can't just go to a chatbot and ask it for legal research, right? It's unfortunately capable of hallucinating fake case law. It's not up to date, etc. What you can do, though, and what co-counsel does is we leverage the technology but anchor it into truth, right? Which is to say we use something called retrieval augmented generation, where you can only base your answer off the real case law that we return to the AI system, as opposed to trying to answer off the cuff, if that makes sense. And so, for reasons of hallucinations, for reasons of security and privacy, basically everything we've done working with OpenAI has been designed to make this something that lawyers can use, whether for legal research, data mining contract law, preparing for a deposition, e-discovery. There's really a number of different ways you can apply it.
So, does this work for any lawyer or is it specific kinds of lawyers?
So, because law, the whole thing is a castle built of language, and this technology works at the fundamental level of language, we found that it's amazingly flexible in terms of where it can be applied. So, our beta clients include in-house counsel at Fortune 50 companies, but also, small boutiques, nonprofits, and some of the largest law firms in America as well.
Really? So, what's the feedback you've been receiving from it?
It's been quite good. I mean, I think, in the beginning, there's a little bit of, a little bit of discomfort, I think. Language is something kind of uniquely human. And so when we see computers able to mimic it so well, there's something almost a little unnerving. But I think once you get past that, I think, there was some concern, are there going to be any lawyers left in 5 years or something like that, which I think is completely overblown. But once they get you using it, the response is really positive. It's just an amazing tool because so much of what a lawyer does requires, reading and summarization, right? Or sort of re-articulating one thing in another way. And so having AI that can assist, not replace, but assist an attorney, has understandably been just very well received.
So I want to go back to you saying, are there going to be any lawyers left in 5 years?
Right.
So over here on the journalism side, we're going through the same thing.
Yeah.
Are there going to be any journalists left? And I've been seeing calls to slow down AI. What is that about? Is that because maybe they really are going to take our jobs?
Wow. Okay. So there's a lot there. So the slowdown AI, there's a range of different concerns that people have, right? It's everything from short-term job displacement to long-term, full-on rogue AI that goes, takes over the world and things like that. So there's a lot of different voices and different concerns going into the slowdown system, right? But I will say, I think most agree that the short-term economic impact is going to be one of the first things we face on this, right? And, I'll just speak from co-counsel, from Casetext's perspective. There's a lot a lawyer does that this AI cannot do, right? It's very powerful, but there's a lot that it's incapable of doing. And so we don't right now, with the current technology, see this as something where lawyers are going to be replaced. I think that certain tasks that lawyers do might, be shifted around. I think some of the billing paradigms might be shifted around, but I don't think that there won't be a fundamental need for human attorneys.
But you said with the technology now, and we see technology is advancing rapidly.
Yeah.
Can you say that with certainty?
No, I mean that's the truth. Anything where you're predicting into the future with this technology, it's very difficult. Much brighter minds than mine disagree on some of the stuff as well, right? So it's not something where I think anyone can claim certainty. That's the truth.
So if I'm a lawyer and I want to get started with Casetext and using co-counsel, what's my first step?
Well, I think it varies a little bit. If you're at a big law firm, I think we have certain there's executives that are assigned just to your firm that you work with for that. If you're at a smaller firm, I think you just get on the wait list, and then we're having to triage people to get on because there's just a lot of demand. But get on the wait list, and as soon as we can, we'll get you processed and in.
And so, not to send anyone to your competition, what should a lawyer even look for when looking for a legal AI assistant?
Yeah, so I mean, look, I think that Casetext was very early to this. We're not going to be the only ones working in this space, nor should we be. I think definitely make sure that the company is not putting you at risk with things like hallucinations, right? So it's tempting to just wrap a UI, a user interface, around the raw model and say, look at all these cool things it can do, but it's not really doing those things often because it's creating fake case law or fake quotes and things like that. So I think the number one thing to do is make sure that the people you're working with know what they're doing and are using it responsibly, and insist on a trial. When they're on the demo, you call out the query. Don't let them pick the query. Things like that. I think sort of always apply.
Okay, so kind of switching gears a bit. You all are working with OpenAI, right? Could you tell me about that partnership? How did it happen?
So, we were working with OpenAI, or at least talking with OpenAI, going back to their earlier model, GPT-3. When they showed us GPT-4, we just realized right away what a profound breakthrough had happened. And getting to be in the vicinity of OpenAI during that period leading up to the release of GPT-4, it will always be sort of one of the most exhilarating and intellectually rewarding periods of my life. They are such an amazing group of people. And, this was something where, they were putting out variants of the model and we were testing it on different legal tasks and giving them feedback. We got to contribute a little bit of what's called reinforcement learning, where some of our reference attorneys got to go kind of teach the model how to do one little task a little bit better. So we got to collaborate with them closely, which I will be forever grateful for. And then mainly it was about, our job was to communicate to them, look, if you want to bring this to the legal domain, here's how things have to be, right? You can't have them donate their data to train another model, right? Lawyers aren't going to do that, right? It needs to have certain privacy, certain security. Obviously, you can't have hallucinations and things like that. So our role was basically just being a domain expert, right, for our little niche and helping, translate that to them. And, I'll never forget, there were moments, we had one client as the California Innocence Project, right? I mean, we're talking getting innocent people out of jail, right? And he had this great write-up about the work he had done and how he'd been using co-counsel to do it. And some of the engineers at OpenAI read that and said, this is why I got into AI. Like, this is the kind of stuff I wanted to do. So it's just been, I'm eternally grateful for the chance to have gotten to work with OpenAI and for the work that they're doing.
Do you fear that being too niched may be problematic in years to come? Because maybe I'm wrong here, but in my mind, when I'm thinking of like how ChatGPT works, the goal is almost for it to operate like a brain. And if it's operating like a brain, it knows everything, which means, is there actually a need for me to have like this subsector, this niche of the brain? Because why can't I just go to the source?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And where you start to see things happen like that is, GPT-4, the bigger model, is better at a lot of tasks that have been fine-tuned using smaller models. So I take an earlier language model and I teach it sentiment analysis, right? Is this tweet happy or sad? I can spend all this time teaching that model, and then all of a sudden GPT-4 comes out of the box and is better at that than the one that I taught all this specific stuff, right? So there's no question that big generalizable models can sometimes exceed domain, capacity. That said, I think, there's so much that's unique to law. It's not just about the language. It's also knowing the workflows, right? It's knowing how these different pieces fit together. That I do think there'll always be a place for sort of domain-specific applications, if that makes sense. Okay. But yes, certainly in terms of the underlying technology, these massive language models are in fact, I think, the state of the art, even over domain-specific trained models.
So what's next for Casetext?
Well, I think we've just been given the privilege of getting to help bring GPT-4 to law, and I think we just want to earn that privilege every day. So a lot of that is education, and going out and talking to folks. A lot of people have a lot of questions about this stuff, and it's new enough that we don't really have answers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think working with firms, both big and small, to figure out, how do you want to evaluate this? What are the use cases you want to apply it? And then when they're ready, kind of helping them ramp it up.
Okay.
So this will keep us busy for a while. So I'm very excited.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Pablo.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes.